The lights were dim, the crowd buzzing with excitement, and the stage glowed in golden hues as a small boy from a humble fishing village in the Philippines took his first trembling steps into the spotlight. His name was Eli, just 12 years old, barefoot and holding a microphone that seemed almost too big for his tiny hands. The judges smiled kindly, but everyone in the audience could sense his nervousness. He stood there, eyes wide, looking at the thousands of faces staring back at him. When the host asked him where he was from, he answered softly, "From a small island where we sing to forget hunger." The room fell silent. Eli had never been inside a place so grand. The flashing cameras, the bright lights, the large stage, it was all a world away from his little bamboo house near the sea. He had come with his mother, who sold vegetables at the local market, and his younger sister, who clung to her mother's skirt backstage. They had borrowed money for the bus ride to Manila, just for this one chance. Singing was the only thing Eli knew he could do better than anyone else in his village. When he sang at home, even the sound of the waves seemed to quiet down. As the first notes of Hotel California began to play, a hush spread across the audience. Eli closed his eyes. For a moment, he wasn't on a stage, he was back home, sitting by the shore, singing with the wind. His voice came out soft at first, trembling, uncertain, but then it grew stronger, warmer, filled with the raw emotion of a boy who had lived a life of hardship yet never lost hope. Every word carried a story, every note a memory. The judges leaned forward. The audience, who moments ago had been chatting, now sat frozen, eyes glistening. As Eli sang, flashes of his struggles flickered in his mind, the days when there was no food, when rain leaked through their roof, when his mother cried silently at night thinking he didn't notice. There were nights when he sang to comfort her, and somehow, his voice made things a little easier. That same emotion filled the hall now, wrapping around everyone like a soft blanket. When he hit the final note, his voice cracked, not from failure, but from emotion so deep it could only come from a heart that had known pain. For a moment, there was silence. Then the crowd erupted. People were standing, cheering, crying. One of the judges, known for being the harshest, wiped tears from his eyes. He leaned toward his microphone and said, "Eli, I don't think you understand what you've just done." That was pure soul. Before anyone could react, the judge slammed his hand down on the golden buzzer. Golden confetti exploded into the air, raining down on the trembling boy. His mother screamed from backstage, tears streaming down her face. Eli stood still, staring up as if he couldn't believe it was real. The golden light reflected in his eyes, and for the first time in his life, he felt seen, not as a poor boy from a forgotten island, but as someone who mattered. As the audience continued to cheer, the host walked over and asked him, "What are you feeling right now?" Eli took a deep breath and said, "I just wanted my mom to see me do something she could be proud of." That single line made the entire audience weep all over again. The judges came onto the stage, hugging him, telling him that his voice had touched their hearts. From that day, Eli's life changed. He was invited to perform on international stages. The world wanted to hear the boy who sang from his soul. Yet he never forgot where he came from. When reporters asked him what he would do with his newfound fame, he said he wanted to build a music school in his village, so children like him could have dreams too. But fame came with challenges. There were moments when he felt lost in the noise of success. Big cities, contracts, and cameras surrounded him. He missed home, missed the smell of the sea, the simplicity of his mother's cooking. At one point, he almost gave up, feeling that the music industry was too cruel and demanding. But every time he thought of quitting, he remembered that moment on stage, the golden confetti, the cheering crowd, and his mother's tearful smile. Years later, when Eli finally returned to his village, he didn't come back as a star. He came back as a teacher. The little school he built stood proudly by the shore, its walls echoing with songs from young voices filled with the same hope he once carried. During the opening ceremony, His mother sat in the front row, her eyes glistening as she watched children sing. Eli took the stage once again, holding the same microphone that had once been too big for his hands. He sang, "Hotel California," one more time, not for judges or cameras, but for his people. The villagers joined in, their voices blending with his, carried by the sea breeze. As he sang the final note, he looked out toward the ocean and whispered a silent thank you, to the hardships, to the pain, to the dream that once seemed impossible. That golden buzzer moment had not only shocked the world, it had changed a boy's destiny and inspired millions to believe that no matter where you come from, your voice, your dream, and your heart can make the world stop and listen. When the video of his audition reached millions of views, comments from around the world poured in. People wrote how his story gave them hope, how his courage made them chase their own dreams. Eli's journey became a reminder that greatness doesn't come from wealth or fame, it comes from a heart brave enough to sing, even in the darkest times. Answer: the boy who once sang to forget hunger became the man who sang to feed souls. His story became a melody that would never fade, proving that one voice, one dream, and one golden moment can indeed shock the world. Months had passed since Eli returned to his village, yet every day still felt like a dream. The small island that was once quiet and forgotten had become alive with laughter, music, and hope. Children came from neighboring towns to study in his music school, each carrying stories of hardship, just like he once did. They sat in a simple bamboo classroom, strumming old guitars and singing with joy that filled the air. Eli often stood outside the room, listening with pride as their voices blended like waves against the shore. But deep down, Eli knew that his journey was far from over. His golden buzzer moment had given him fame, but fame had never been his true dream. What he wanted most was to use his music to help others rise from the same struggles he knew too well. One afternoon, while he was teaching, a letter arrived, an invitation to perform at a grand international charity concert in London, featuring artists from all over the world. The organizers had seen his story and wanted him to sing the same song that had once shocked the world. When he told his mother, she smiled and said, "Go, my son. The world still needs to hear your heart." But Eli hesitated. He had built a peaceful life here. The thought of leaving the island again made him anxious. He still remembered how lonely fame had felt before. Still, he knew this was his chance to show the world that dreams could grow even from the poorest soil. So he agreed. The whole village gathered at the small port to send him off. Children waved handmade signs that read, "Sing for us, Kuya Eli." His mother hugged him tightly, whispering, "Don't forget who you are." With tears in his eyes, he boarded the ferry, watching the fading shore as the sun painted the horizon gold. When he arrived in London, the cold air bit his skin, and the towering buildings made him feel small. The stage was larger than anything he'd ever seen before, filled with bright screens and cameras from every direction. During rehearsals, other singers with glamorous outfits and professional teams surrounded him. Some looked at him with curiosity, wondering how a barefoot boy from a remote island had ended up among them. But Eli didn't let it shake him. He still wore the same simple clothes, still carried the same old guitar that had been given to him by a fisherman when he was 10. On the night of the concert, thousands filled the arena. The air was electric, the energy overwhelming. Eli stood backstage, heart pounding, staring at the golden microphone waiting for him. His name was announced, from the Philippines, Eli Santos. The crowd erupted in applause. He stepped forward, eyes reflecting the blinding lights, and took a deep breath. When the music began, he didn't just sing, he poured his entire soul into the song. This time, it wasn't just about proving himself. It was about giving voice to every forgotten dream, every child who sang through hunger, every mother who cried in silence. His voice rose and fell like the tide, weaving emotion into every note. The audience grew still, their hearts caught in his story. By the time he reached the chorus, people were already wiping their tears. When the song ended, There was no sound for a few seconds, only stunned silence. Then came the standing ovation. Thousands of people, from different countries and languages, united by one boy's voice. Cameras zoomed in on his tear-streaked face as he whispered into the microphone, "This is for the children who still dream in the dark." The video of that performance spread like wildfire once again. It trended on every platform, replayed in classrooms, churches, and even small homes across the world. But what touched people most wasn't just his voice, it was his humility. After the show, when reporters asked how it felt to be called the voice of hope, Eli smiled and said, "Hope doesn't belong to me. It belongs to everyone who dares to dream despite pain." When he returned home, he found his small school overflowing with new students. Donations had poured in from people all over the world who had seen his performance. With the money, he built more classrooms, bought instruments, and gave free lessons to children who couldn't afford to study. Music filled the island day and night. Tourists began to visit, not to see a famous singer, but to witness the village that sang its way out of poverty. But success always came with new challenges. As the school grew, Eli faced pressure from sponsors and managers who wanted to commercialize his name. They offered him contracts, endorsements, and tours that could make him a millionaire. But when he read the fine print, he realized they wanted him to abandon the school and focus solely on his career. He spent sleepless nights thinking about what to do. He could have everything he once dreamed of, money, fame, comfort, but he couldn't let go of the children who now looked up to him as their light. One night, as he sat by the shore, the sound of waves reminded him of his childhood. He closed his eyes and whispered to himself, "I didn't start singing to be rich. I sang so my mother could smile again." The next morning, he made his choice. He declined the offers, choosing instead to stay on the island and continue teaching. The media called it a waste of talent, but Eli didn't care. He had already found the true meaning of success. Years passed, and Eli grew older. His hair turned silver, but his voice remained warm and soulful. The music school became a beacon of hope, sending students across the world to perform, teach, and inspire. Every time one of them stood on a stage, they carried a piece of his story with them. On his last public performance, Eli once again sang Hotel California, the song that had changed everything. But this time, he sang it surrounded by his students. As the final note faded, they all stood together, holding hands, tears streaming down their faces. The crowd erupted in applause, but Eli simply smiled. He looked up at the night sky, filled with the same golden light he had once seen raining down years ago, and whispered, "This was never just my golden moment, it was ours." When he passed away peacefully in his sleep years later, the world mourned not just a singer, but a man who had taught them that music, love, and hope could heal even the poorest hearts. His school still stands by the sea, where children continue to sing his songs. And when the wind blows across the island at sunset, it carries the faint sound of a boy's voice, the same one that once shocked the world and reminded humanity that even from the smallest places, the most powerful voices can rise. The years moved gently, like waves kissing the shore, and Eli's name became a legend, spoken with reverence not just in the Philippines, but across the world. His story was told in schools, in documentaries, and in every corner where dreams struggled to survive. Yet, in the little island where it all began, life remained simple. The sea still shimmered gold at sunset, and the wind still carried songs from the music school that Eli had built with love. After Eli's passing, his students, now grown men and women, returned from different parts of the world. Some had become music teachers, others performers, and a few even stars in their own right. But all of them came back to honor the man who had given them a voice. They stood in front of the old bamboo schoolhouse, now rebuilt in stone and glass, with a large mural of Eli painted on its walls. His smiling face looked out toward the sea, where his ashes had been scattered. Among the students was Miguel, one of Eli's first pupils. He had been a shy boy with a stutter, often too scared to sing in front of anyone. Eli had once told him, "Your voice doesn't have to be perfect, Miguel. It just has to be honest." Those words had stayed with him forever. Now, Miguel was a respected musician and the new head of the music school. But as he stood in front of the crowd gathered for the 10th anniversary of Eli's passing, his hands trembled. He looked at the sea, then back at the hundreds of children and visitors gathered around. Cameras rolled, reporters whispered, and villagers filled every corner of the open field. Miguel took a deep breath and began. Eli Santos was not just a teacher. He was a light for every child who thought the world had forgotten them. He taught us that dreams are not a privilege, they are a right. His voice cracked slightly as he continued, "Today, we open a new chapter in his honor. This is the Eli Santos Foundation for Music and Hope." The crowd erupted into applause. Behind him, a large golden curtain was pulled down to reveal a new concert hall, the largest ever built in their region. Inside, it was adorned with photos from Eli's journey, his golden buzzer moment, his performance in London, his return home, and countless images of him smiling with children. That night, the foundation held its first concert. Children from around the world performed songs inspired by Eli's life. Some sang in English, others in their native languages, but all carried the same message: hope, courage, and love. As Miguel sat backstage, listening to their voices, he felt the same warmth Eli once described when he sang from the heart. Halfway through the show, the lights dimmed, and the screen on stage flickered to life. It showed an old video of Eli's final interview. The audience went silent as his familiar voice filled the hall. "If one day, I'm no longer here, don't cry for me," Eli said, smiling gently. "Just keep singing, because every time a child sings without fear, I live again." Tears streamed down faces across the room. Even Miguel couldn't hold back his sobs. When the video ended, he stepped back onto the stage, clutching his old guitar, the same one Eli had given him years ago. "I was that child who sang with fear," he said softly. "But because of Eli, I found my courage. Tonight, I sing for him." The hall grew quiet as Miguel began to strum the opening chords of Hotel California. The audience gasped softly. The same song that had once changed Eli's life was being played again. But this time, it wasn't just a song, it was a prayer, a tribute, a promise. As Miguel sang, a holographic projection of Eli appeared behind him, smiling, holding his own guitar. The audience gasped, many crying uncontrollably as the two voices, one from the past, one from the present, merged in perfect harmony. By the final chorus, everyone in the hall had joined in, their voices rising together like a choir of gratitude. When the last note faded, Miguel whispered, "Thank you, teacher." The crowd stood, clapping endlessly, and for a brief moment, it felt as though Eli himself was there, smiling, proud, at peace. In the following years, the foundation grew beyond anyone's expectations. Scholarships were created for underprivileged children across Asia. Music centers were built in small towns, each bearing Eli's name. His story became a lesson in resilience, taught not only to aspiring singers but to all who needed to believe that no circumstance was too poor for greatness to bloom. One day, a journalist asked Miguel what he thought Eli's legacy truly was. Miguel smiled and said, "It wasn't the golden buzzer, or the fame, or even the music. It was the belief he gave us, that every voice, no matter how small, can change the world." Decades later, long after Miguel had grown old, the island remained alive with song. Tourists who visited would often hear the children singing by the shore at sunset. They didn't know the full story, but they felt something magical in the air, something warm, pure, and timeless. And if you stood quietly by the water, you could almost hear it too, the faint sound of a boy's voice, carried by the wind, singing with all his heart. The boy who once sang to forget hunger had become a melody that the world would never forget. His golden moment had turned into a golden legacy, a reminder that even the smallest light can shine across the world, and that one song, sung with truth and love, can echo through generations, forever.